Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to the County Services Subcommittee of the Washington County Quorum Court this evening. I had failed to recruit someone to do our prayer and pledge, but Justice Secchi has jumped in and said she's more than willing. So Justice Secchi, will you do us the honor of prayer and pledge?
Thank you, Judge, for the honor. Will you please stand with me in honor and bow your heads, please? Heavenly Father, we thank you that you have blessed the United States of America, and you have blessed Arkansas, and you bless your people as we live here on this land. And we just pray that your will be done in this place according to your will and your pleasure. And we ask this in Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you so much, Justice Secchi. With that, we'll take up the adoption of the agenda. Do I have any proposed amendments to the agenda? Justice Coger?
Yes, thank you, Judge. I would like to add an ordinance to tonight's agenda that I circulated to the court this morning. It's for reconsideration of certain applications for ARPA funds that the county had last year, as 11 that have asked to be reconsidered. And my reasons for doing that is, first of all, last year this court obligated or said that we were going to set aside $2.3 million for ARPA money to go to the community. And I think we need to stand by that. We need to stand by our word and see that that happens. Also, it's come to my attention that all these nonprofits that were denied or deemed ineligible by the Northwest Arkansas Economic Development District are in fact operating within a qualified census tract, which according to the ARPA final rules and the Treasury guidelines, they are presumed to be eligible for ARPA funds. And also there's a...
Just a second, Justice Coger. Justice Secchi, you have a point of order? Will you cue your mic, please? I'm sorry, will you cue your mic so we can... Justice Secchi?
I do believe your instructions were, is there something to be added to the agenda? Not further discussion or justification. It's supposed to be an amendment to the agenda only.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Secchi. Justice Coger, I think she's a little bit right.
I would like to appeal your ruling, sir. I would like to appeal.
I haven't made a ruling yet.
You said she's right.
I think she's right. I'm asking you, can we just explain what the ordinance is and then we'll vote on it? If we want to debate it, we'll debate it after it's added
that's
to
what
the
I'm trying to
agenda.
do. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain what it is. So,
Okay.
so that's the reason I'm bringing it forward, because, and these people deserve the due process to be heard. The other 1.9 million to returning home and 2.9 million to upskill, they were heard. They got to come and talk to the court. I'm just asking for the same consideration for these people. Thank you, Judge.
All right, we have a motion to add ordinance that Justice Coger disseminated earlier this afternoon. Do I have a second to add that ordinance? Second. I have a second by Justice Rios Stafford. Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll? This is to add the ordinance J.P. Coger's requesting to the agenda.
Thank you.
Coleman Taylor. No. David Wilson. No. Sean Simons. No. Kyle Lyons. No. Lisa Ecke. No. Charles Dean. No, ma'am. Shonda Washington. Yes. Beth Coger.
Yes.
Robert Dennis. No. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. No. Gary Ricker. No, ma'am. Butch Pond.
No. That motion fails. I think Ms. Myra got these sent out earlier today, but we have two compensation letters from Circuit Clerk Kyle Sylvester. And I would like to add these tonight. It's part of our employment policy that if anybody is promoted and receives compensation above the first quartile, that has to be approved by the Personnel Committee. That was brought to my attention this morning. I apologize. This is my fault. These aren't on the agenda. I know we like to avoid adding things to the agenda, but Circuit Clerk Sylvester wants this to get attention tonight so that he can take care of these employees. Justice Lyons?
Now, motion to add this to the agenda, Judge.
I have a motion to add discussion and approval of compensation above the first quartile for Circuit Clerk Sylvester. We will make that the last item of new business. I appreciate everyone's cooperation on that and understanding. With that, we're going to move into our monthly reports. First up, is Director Tinsley or a representative in the audience this evening? I'm sorry? Oh, I guess so. And I think we have to approve the agenda, right? And all done. Okay, so I'm sorry. I had a motion by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Pond. Ms. Meyer, all those in favor for those two? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, we're good there. And then, do I have a motion to approve? Motion to adopt the agenda as amended by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Sorry, I got a little bit too motivated there. Back to our monthly reports. Is Director Tinsley in the audience this evening? I did not receive any word from Director Tinsley, so his reports are in the packet, and if you guys have questions, please reach out to him, and we'll try to get anything answered. With that, Sheriff's report, Sheriff Cantrell. Good evening.
Thank you, Judge. Jay Cantrell, Washington County Sheriff. Our report, I hope, is in your packet. Our activity report. Intakes are down a little bit, but our average population is up. So, obviously we can surmise that the people that are coming into jail are staying a little longer. State did take 39 this past month, so that was a welcome relief to get a few people down to the state prison. But we still have our monthly average daily population still 171 for the state prisoners. So that's up from last year. Federal prisoners are down a little bit from last year. Still have a lot of pretrial people. So nothing out of the ordinary. The jails just keeps clicking along at about this pace for the last several months. So I don't see any decline coming down the pike. Be happy to answer any questions about this report, and then if it pleases the court, I'll give a quick update on our construction project.
Any questions outside the construction project? Justice Koger?
Sheriff Cantrell, I think I mentioned this last month. Is it possible to get more detailed reports like we used to get when we had an actual county subcommittee of courts and law enforcement? Because your reports were so detailed then. And like, for instance, the Juvenile Detention Center gave us 6 pages of reports with all kinds of data and statistics. And then and I know last year the sheriff got some new software. And I wonder if that new software is part of the problem, or can it not generate those kinds of reports anymore?
I think that we can probably compile any numbers that the court wishes, but I don't know who makes that call. If it's a majority of the court or one member, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, how that process works. We'd be happy. We were trying to condense it to make it more concise and get the important information to the court, but certainly be able to hopefully answer most any question that comes along, if there is a question.
Yeah, I would say that we would want to work and get any specific metrics that we need, also balancing that with the time commitment it takes Sheriff Cantrell's staff to compile those. But I think Sheriff Cantrell's very open to working with anybody who
Well,
needs those stats.
I had written the sheriff about, some more stuff that I would like to see included. And for instance, the number of people that are there on bonds of 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 25,000. I think that would be helpful for the court to know. The more data we have, the better decisions we make.
Right, yeah. I think all that stuff is also accessible on our website, on our detainee population website. Can be sorted by bond amount or average times in the jail, or by charge, or by alphabetically.
Okay.
So there's a lot of capabilities within that spreadsheet that's on the website.
So that would be something that you could bring to us then?
Certainly, I could just forward you a link if anybody wanted to look at it at any time. But
I just think it'd be helpful for the community.
You just want the number of people with a and their bonds amount?
Well, that's one thing that has specifically asked for earlier was, the different bonds amount. But also, we used to get all kinds of information about how many people had been rearrested and the percentage in the jail that had been there before. I just think that's good information to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Justice Hickey?
Thank you. I disagree. I think if the information is available to the public, they can go to your website, because we don't have any jurisdiction over bonds. We don't set those bonds. That's done by the circuit judges. And just to have information is, I think, duplicating government and costs. As far as rearrests, we have nothing to do with that. That is beyond the scope of our authority, other than, did you know, did you know, did you know? I know, I know, I know. But I think you have clearly stated for everybody in the county to know, if they want to know this information, and if it's relevant and pertinent to them specifically, they can go to your website. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. I think that information is fairly easy accessible, but certainly if the court deems that information important, we'll compile it.
I mean, if the information's there, it's important, you have it. If it needs to be brought forth for discussion, but I don't see how it's relevant or to this court, because we don't make those kind of determinations, in my opinion. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Justice Coger?
Thank you very much, Judge. I just like to say I think it's very relevant. We're looking at spending somewhere around $20 million of taxpayer money to expand the jail. The more information we have, the more data we have, again, the better decisions we make. Also, I want to say that while I'm certainly capable of going to the county website and getting that information, I think there's many people in my community, my constituents, who aren't able to do that. And for that reason, I think the more information we have, the better. Thank you.
Questions for Sheriff Cantrell? Outside of, he says he's gonna get a construction update, so we might have questions to follow up on that. I think we're good, Sheriff Cantrell.
All right. Well,
Oh, I'm sorry, just a second.
yeah, excuse me.
Justice Pond, sorry, I just saw your light.
You can call me Butch. Hey, Jay, I get a little uncomfortable with some of these issues sometimes. I feel like we get a more than adequate report from you on these issues and subjects, and it bothers me a little bit that sometimes we might have some people with a tendency to want us to kind of get over into business of the judiciary branch, or, what happens with circuit judges, prosecutors, public defenders. Where our business is seeing to it that we have an adequate jail space by financing things like jail expansion when there's been such a population expansion. I'm not really sure, since that's our business, it's our responsibility to see to it you have a place to house detainees. But I think that's a little beyond our bailiwick to be trying to determine, well, how many of these individuals here, and then start looking at them by name and things like that are repeat offenders, and how many are not. And like I said, I just think we're getting way over too far in the judiciary branch of government when we start messing in their business. Anyhow, I just wanted to tell you thank you so much for what you do.
Yes, sir.
Construction update?
Yes, sir. The judge and Chief Lance Johnson and County Attorney Brian Lester met a couple times now with our architect and our construction manager. And so we've scaled the scope of our project back to eliminate a 96-bed housing unit to try to come in at that budget amount. We had a meeting last week with our construction manager and architect, and we are all in agreement that we've bid this thing twice. There's no indication that we're going to get any better bids bidding it a third time. So we are actively searching and seeking for additional remedies to try to get some competitive bids. Chief Johnson has the spec book, and he's looking at the specs to see if there is some anomaly in that book of specifications that the contractors might get that would preclude them from wanting to bid this job. We just got a new set of plans in the mail today, so I'll get those to Chief Johnson. He will review the plans. He's got a phenomenal background in these big construction projects, and he understands what the specs are, what the plans are. So hopeful that he'll be able to maybe gain some insight once he reads those specs or looks through them and then sees the plan to figure out what our next course of action is. But at this time, we've kind of got that project on pause until we can come up with a plan to try to solicit some competitive bids.
And with your liberty, I'll just add that we're here to support Sheriff Cantrell. So my office is putting our shoulder against the cart as we see fit and where that we can be helpful. And so that's what I want to assure you guys. I know that we're getting a little bit, I don't want to put words in Sheriff Cantrell's mouth, but it's been 16 months and we haven't turned a shovel of dirt, as Sheriff Cantrell likes to say. And so we're trying to help that process as we can. Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. We are so blessed to have Judge Deakins and his Chief of Staff, Lance
Yes, we are.
Johnson.
I agree.
He has previous experience building a prison, doesn't he? So he knows what to look for. He knows who's over, who's under in bidding, and he knows what to look for in these specs. And with great confidence, and I'm glad he's not here because he just blushed to no end. But this is a perfect time and a perfect season and the right combination of skills and leadership. And I'm thankful that we have Chief of Staff Johnson at the helm. Thank you.
Well, he understands the complexity of jail construction, that it's kind of a unique animal, and he's done those kind of projects before. In fact, he said he did 2 of them in Texas, and he was 6'4" and had a full head of hair when he started those projects. So he understands that they're complex in nature, and I'm glad that he's on our team to help us try to navigate through this.
Justice Lemming?
Jay, how many beds will you be building this time? How many,
Well,
you're taking out 96, what was the grand total in that one?
Well, that will leave 132
132.
left. Some of those in the medical suite, and then some of it in a separate housing unit.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Rio Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. So I'm just trying to remember like where we're at. So we put the whole thing out for bid twice, or we're good? We're
We
going to put
did.
it out the second
We put
time?
it out the first time, and we didn't receive bids on all the packages.
Yeah, I remember that.
24 packages, so we put it out again for bids, and we did receive a bid on all but one package, which was the actual building, the metal building. But we only received one bid on most of those different packages, so there was no competition, there was no
see.
competitiveness, and some of those bids were right in line with what they had projected, and some of those bids were twice what they had projected. Anything with concrete or steel or electrical seemed to be exorbitantly high. So, and we know the generator is a big part of that. You know, the generator cost is probably 80% higher than they had projected, just because, you know, they've got 100 generators on the lot and orders for 1,000
Gotcha.
up at the generator plant in Wisconsin.
I was up in Bentonville this weekend, and I think I know where all the concrete is right now. Thank you.
We're having a lot of discussions about how do we get our local construction community to help support this project. So we do think there's some capacity there. We know that Northwest Arkansas's got a lot of construction, but we need to have some more local involvement. Justice Dean?
Yeah, when you put this out for bid, is it going out to general contractors?
Generals and subs.
And
They put it out
subs?
to about 1,000 different contractors that they have on their listserv
Yeah.
in all the various trades.
With all that's going on right now, I could see where that you guys would be having a hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's trying to get everybody together.
Yeah, Chief Johnson estimates there's 200 commercial projects going on along this corridor between
yes,
here and
sir.
Bella Vista.
Yes, sir. A lot of big growth going on.
Yeah,
Yep. Well, thank you for your duties.
yes, sir.
Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. Sheriff Cantrell, you said that, it would leave about 132 beds. Did that eliminate one pod or one
One housing unit, yes.
Okay, so would these 100, taking away whatever goes to medical, would that be men's and women's or just women's?
Well, you know, it was originally designed to be the women's housing unit, but since we've lost 96, we'll just have to see how that configuration works for us. But it will not be co-ed. It'll be either the males or the females. But we can't put all our females in there. We have about 138 females today, so they wouldn't all fit in this one particular housing unit.
Okay. What about do you have a dollar amount that when you reduce down to 132, that might have decreased
Well,
the
you know,
dollar amount?
we estimated based on what the costs were, that it would cut the cost by about 7 million.
7, okay.
And we're about 6.8 million over budget, so that was the quickest and the easiest way to trim 6.8 million off, was to lop a building off.
Okay, and with the changes, would that include any classroom space?
Well, there is some classroom space, obviously not as much, because one of those housing units that we lopped off had some classroom space, but there's still a little bit of classroom space in the remaining housing unit.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Final questions for Sheriff Cantrell? Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
Our next item up is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee update. Coordinator Smith is out of town this evening, and so her report's in the packet. If you have questions for her, I'd invite you to reach out, and she can try to get those answered. With that, we'll move on to unfinished business. That's agenda item number 7. Items number 7 is ordinance providing online posting of all Washington County resolutions, ordinances, and contracts. Item 23-0-008. Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. First of all, I need to amend my ordinance to take out the one word contracts in the very first paragraph, and just have it county laws, resolutions, and ordinances. I'm taking out the word contracts. I was asked to do that. And I'm fine with that for now.
I have a motion to amend the ordinance, line number 14, to strike the word contracts. Does that have a second? Second by Justice Rios Stafford. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, with that, all those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, so we'll take up the ordinance as amended. Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. Okay, this is my ordinance to publish ordinances and resolutions online. And when I started this process back in January, I talked to County Clerk Becky Lou Allen, and she very graciously worked with me, and we came up with a solution, and we are publishing them online. But I want an ordinance. It should not be dependent on whether or not an elected official or any one person wants to publish them online. It should be law that they're published online. And I would like to see this done. And for now, the way that we have it set up is Ms. Llewellyn publishes the ordinance and resolutions by month. And even though it's not a searchable database like we hope to have in the future, at least you can go online. People out in the county don't have to drive into town to go to the county clerk's office, lift that heavy book, and we'll look through and try to find them. And in this day and time, it's so easy to do that. And just look at the long agendas that we publish online. So I appreciate very much if my colleagues would support this and vote for yes. Thank you.
Further discussion on item number 7? Justice Taylor?
Thank you, Judge. I'm not seeing, I've heard the backlash and the feedback and all that. Personally, I think this is a fairly simple issue that is a matter of just putting information into the World Wide Web. And, the fact that statutes aren't required to be published but every 5 years, there's nothing we can do about that. That's state law. From a county perspective, though, if we're capable of doing this, then I personally don't have any problem with it. Like, I think it's fairly straightforward and fairly easy, and honestly shocked that we're not doing it anyway. So that's kind of my take on it.
Justice Pond?
I believe I asked you before, since this was brought to the county clerk's attention, are they now providing this service from the clerk's office?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on the item? Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. Well, I know, I'm looking around out there. I know that last time we decided to table this, it was because we wanted to, there were some folks who maybe wanted to hear from the county clerk herself and have her weigh in, and I thought that was the reason that we tabled it last time, or maybe the time before that, I'm not sure. But I don't think she's here. And I'm not, was she invited? Did anyone reach out to her? Just, that was my question.
Well, I certainly did not, if you're asking me. I didn't reach out to County Clerk Llewellyn. I think I failed. We have a motion and a second on this ordinance to pass it as amended. Did I grab that? I don't think I grabbed that yet. Did I already grab that? A motion to approve. Justice Coger?
I just, maybe I didn't make the motion. I said I asked my colleagues to support me. So I would move that we pass this ordinance on to the full quorum court for approval. Thank
Okay.
you.
Second by Justice Dennis. Any further discussion? Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I think from my point of view, I don't disagree with the ordinance. I think what I disagree with is it's already being done. And we have a lot of things done in the county that ordinances don't require. And so I don't see a need for an ordinance to get something done that's already being done. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Justice Lyons. Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. How do I say this? This is not our authority. It is the authority of the elected official, the county clerk. They have the jurisdiction. I mean, we don't need an ordinance because it is already part of the county clerk's duty to provide this information to the citizens, and that is what Becky Llewellyn is already doing. So this would be a duplication and an unnecessary ordinance because by law, she has to perform these things. And what we're doing is we're telling Ms. Llewellyn, the county clerk, that she now by law has to do this. Well, that's her duty. So for that reason, I'm voting against this because it's already being done and we don't need to duplicate. And it's not within our authority to do that. She's doing it, and we're going to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Ecke. Any further discussion? Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. It was not being done until January when I brought this ordinance forward. And Ms. Llewellyn has helped me with that. It needs to be a law because it shouldn't be dependent, as I said, on just whether one person wants it done. And we tell other officials what to do all the time. We pass budgets, we pass laws. This is not unusual. And actually, it's the county judge's job to see that county ordinances are carried out. But the ordinances are filed in Ms. Llewellyn's office, so it just makes sense that she would be the one to do that and in working with the judge if that became a problem. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Justice Rios Stafford?
I'll just point out that the legislative branch tells members of the executive branch to do things all the time. If we didn't, then the legislature wouldn't be allowed to tell the state to issue concealed carry permits, for example. Just one example of many.
Justice Taylor?
Thank you, Judge. I think it's worth clarifying that the clerk's job is the publication, right? And so that's what the statute says in state law is that, the clerk will codify and publish everything every 5 years. The clerk currently is going above and beyond her required role and it's essentially being done at her pleasure. So if, to me, if, let's say, the clerk retired, let's say she got unelected, let's say somebody beat her, whatever, new clerk comes in and doesn't want to do this anymore, they simply don't have to do it. And so I think the point is that the job be assigned to someone. We assign these type jobs to folks all the time in government, from our position as the legislative body, and so I don't really have a problem with that. But, you know, if it's as simple as it appears on its face, which it is, I mean, it's a page long, you know, I don't think this is placing some huge burden on the clerk's office where, you know, in fact, it's her job to do this. Every 5 years, we're just accelerating that, you know, 5X. And so that's kind of my position on it and how I view it. So just pointing that out.
Thank you, Justice Taylor. Any further discussion? Public comments on this ordinance?
Is it
There
on
you go.
now? Okay. Sherry Main, 15451 Riches Road, Fayetteville. I don't know what the big deal is over this. I've been researching the Arkansas Code online since this morning. I did finally find House Bill 1249 that was passed in the 90th General Assembly regular session of 2015. And it is subtitled Concerning the Authority of a County Quorum Court to Revise, Adopt, and Codify Ordinances. And it changed then and amended it to, at 5-year intervals, county ordinances of a general and permanent nature enacted in each of the several counties shall be compiled into a uniform code and published. Section 2A states a quorum court may codify county ordinances and revise the codification of county ordinances at other periodic times as it considers necessary. In everything I've read, it's the quorum court's duty to see that the county ordinances are codified and revised and available to the circuit or the county clerk. It is not the county clerk's job to post them, and it needs to be an ordinance. It needs to be an ordinance stating what is the pleasure of the quorum court. I tried to research today on the Arkansas County's Muni Code, or whatever it's called, which is very, very not user-friendly. When you go to click on the amendments to the ordinances that are all highlighted in blue down under the original codes, you can't get to the link. It says link unavailable, and then if you wait and wait and wait and refresh, it will finally get you to the amendment that you're searching for. And I did this in order to find some of the amendments on another issue that's coming up in the agenda. We can do better. We should do better as a county to make this information available to the citizens. If you want to be transparent and accountable, why are you not publishing these? Why is it such a big deal? I mean, you make the ordinances, you make the amendments, the 15 sitting on this horseshoe, it should be public record. Everyone can't come to these meetings. I mean, I've been keeping up with the planning information since 2004. There's no way any person can go online and find
Thank you,
information.
Ms. Main. That's time. Any other public comments?
Is my 3 minutes up?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you for
Any
your
other
time and
public comments?
consideration on this matter. even
Ms.
though you
Meyer, will you
probably
please
won't
call the
pass it.
roll?
Coleman Taylor. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Shonda Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond. 8 to 5, 4.
Item number 7.1 will move to the full quorum court. With that, we'll move on to new business. First up is a discussion on the Patriot Park project. We have with us Mr. Petty, who's the developer of that project, to give us an update this evening. Welcome, Mr. Petty. If you will, there should be a little person on the right button up there, right, the very right button. Move, there you go.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Judge. Does everyone have a copy of the handout? It's about 9 pages. We're not going to go through all of it. I just want to be here and give you a brief update and answer any questions that you might have and allow time for that and then be respectful of your time. Don't know if I'm the only thing between you and dinner or not, but want to be as brief as possible, but as thorough as possible. So, again, Jim Petty with Strategic Realty. We were selected by the Washington County a few years ago through an RFQ process to develop housing for veterans. And Patriot Park is the product or the project that we're doing here, and it is 60 units. I think I gave a previous update, and I don't know, I apologize, how many are new from that previous update, so I'll just give you a real quick recap. 60 units, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, about $12 million. The site is over on the old parking lot on North and College. This site plan on the second page kind of gives you an idea of the layout. There's approximately 9 buildings, I believe. We've designed it as efficient as we possibly could on this site. There's green space on the backside because of the large hill there, and we've designed it with the neighborhood, both commercially on the front side and then the neighborhood in the back, and we'll point out a couple of those. The rents are going to run roughly average for the 1 bedroom, approximately $400 a month, 2 bedroom, approximately $500, again average, and 3 bedroom, $600. There's 24 1 bedrooms, 24 2 bedrooms, and 12 3 bedrooms. You can see from the architect's kind of schematics what these will look like, and these are not just preliminary schematics. We are about 80% with the construction plans, about 95% with the engineering plans. I would expect for the 100% set of both of those to be presented to the county's building department in June, late in the month of June. We aligned the buildings to look across the front where the office and intake space is going to be, to look like the commercial that runs along College. But on the backside, you'll see a couple of cottage-style buildings as you transition into the neighborhood. There will not be any commercial per se. The architect shows a picture of a menu that's really going to be for the use of the veterans, and so there's really not much commercial activity or commercial development on that. So there's been a lot of discussion for, I guess, going back. Probably, we received our first notification of funding for the $12 million project in August or September of 2020. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion in response to the RFQ and so forth leading up to that. In my last update, I told everyone that I hate to get in and start selling on a project that is this worthwhile, because it takes time. And it takes time anywhere, but in Northwest Arkansas, a project takes somewhere between 2.5 to 4 years to bring to fruition. And you throw in there a pandemic, you throw in there unprecedented construction costs. I can feel the sheriff's pain on the construction costs, and there's just going to be delays. But we're persistent, and we're just about to the goal line, and would, like I said, expect to have the construction plans ready for the building department to start reviewing by the latter part of June. The funding is about $12 million. The vast majority of that is federal funding using a tax credit and also the federal home program and some National Housing Trust Fund program, which is also for veterans. One misnomer, which I've tried to put out, and it never was the case, was that the word on the street somehow evolved into this was going to be a homeless veteran housing development, and that was never the case. It was to be available for all veterans that met the income requirements to live there. It was not ever targeted to homeless. We've had conversations with the Veteran Services offices, with the VA, and other veterans organizations through the last 3 years to try to bring what we think will serve a great need with those 60 units for veterans. So I'm going to pause right there or stop. I didn't have any, like I said, elaborate presentation at this point, and just see if I can answer any questions that might be looming out there that you might be hearing. I know Justice Koger had some questions, but I never received those, so I figured you would have those tonight anyway, so that's okay.
Justice Taylor?
Thanks, Judge. Just out of curiosity, what's the ingress and egress going to be at that intersection?
So it's the city of Fayetteville is making an improvement there on North Street, but it's going to be just past that, off of North Street, and then also off of whatever that other street is on the south end of that. If you look on page 2, you can kind of see where I'm talking about there. So
there will be a college access?
So
or
no,
not?
there is not college access.
Okay.
You will turn off of North Street, and then whatever that other street is on the other end of the block,
Oh,
on
I
the
see.
south end of
Yep.
the block there, kind of
Okay.
on the upper end.
Okay. Thank you.
Justice Koger?
Thank you, Judge. And Jim, I'm so sorry. I did send them to you on May 24th at 12:06. I don't know what happened. And I do have some constituents here tonight who submitted these questions.
Okay.
And so if you don't, I mean, I don't want to take over if someone else has questions, but I can go through this list. I don't think they're going to have a chance to ask questions, and these are some they submitted.
Sure, I'm happy.
The first one is, will the lot be mowed and kept clean this year?
Fair enough, and yes, and we are actually in the process of doing that. But the long-term maintenance, once there's buildings there, I've got lots of people, including the judge and the county, that will be looking after and making sure that the lawn is mowed. So,
Okay, that was number one. Number two, the public's very interested in seeing the results of the engineer's core sample test and would appreciate any information you can provide in that area.
So the core sampling test, so we have had those. That is above my pay grade. We have engineers and structural engineers and soils investigating firms that are paid to know that, and whatever their recommendation is what it's been designed to.
Okay, so if constituents wanted to see a copy of this core sample test, they could get those?
Sure, I would be glad to. Is it an engineer?
I don't know. They came
Okay.
from different people. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I did talk to, one engineer did talk to me, but I don't know if this was his question. Number three, what is the timeline for starting completion?
For starting completion or starting
Start
construction?
and completion?
Oh, start and completion.
Now, the engineer did ask me about this, and there, excuse me, he had a word for that, but I can't remember. It's some kind of schedule that he
Okay.
was talking about.
So, once these plans are presented and they're approved, we will move immediately into breaking ground for real this time. It will take approximately 12 months to complete from that standpoint. But to answer your question more specifically, with the plans and giving adequate time for the county to address anything, and then sending off the water system and sewer system to the health department for approval, we're probably talking about realistically breaking ground in August.
Okay. Okay, and again, I'm sorry that these did not make it to you. Number 4, have you gone through the city of Fayetteville to get approval for a large-scale development?
So this is county-owned land, and the county and the city have an agreement to kind of stay in their own lanes. And but to answer your question, we have met with the city. We want to be good citizens, and we want to address part of the development design was designed, and our the Miller Bacchus architect and land planning guys, we have developed it basically that if it did have to get approval, they said there was one waiver that they would have to suggest, and it was like the distance from the parking, I mean, the sidewalk that's out front to the front door, and having another sidewalk on our property. But the design has been with not only with the counties, primarily being their design requirements, but also with the city in mind. And that's why you see those buildings along the front on College. That's why you see the cottage-style homes there as you go into the neighborhood on the north side, and then you have the green space on the other side.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad you brought that up. Everyone who's reached out to me they're loving the new design. I mean, they're very, very pleased with that. Okay, number 6, some constituents say that in the 70s, there was a plan by some physician groups to build a 4-story medical arts building on the exact same spot. That plan was completely abandoned in part because there was an adequate water source. They tell me that the water line that runs under Highland Avenue is 12 inches, but the water line that runs under College is only 8 inches, and that was a problem, and they're wondering how you plan to address that, or if that is actually a problem.
So our design engineer has designed the water system to take all of that into consideration. I don't know if they're taking it from the 12-inch or the 8-inch or where they're getting it. All I know is it's been designed and it's sufficient to support the 60 units that we have there.
But that would be in the plan somewhere, correct?
But that would be in the plans, that's right.
Okay, and let me look at the next one. I think you may have already answered that one. Okay, you've answered that one. Let me look at the next one. Okay, some people are concerned about the turning radius on North Street, that it might be a problem for large trucks to turn there. And they ask if you're aware that the city of Fayetteville does not allow parking on the north side of Baxter Lane. Apparently, there's an ordinance that prohibits parking there. And so how would you address their concerns about the turning radius?
So the turning radius that you're referring to is on
North Street.
Yeah, I think that is addressed by the city's improvement to North Street, because they are taking in part of the site to have an additional turn lane or something. I don't know the details. Our engineers and architects do, but our guys coordinated with McClellan Engineers, which is who the city's engineer was, on whatever they were doing there on North Street. And as far as Baxter, I'm glad you said that because I couldn't remember the name of that street. Everything is just turning in off of Baxter into our site there.
Okay, and that's all I have from my constituents so far, but if someone reaches out to me and wants more information, may I reach out to you again?
Absolutely.
And thank you so much.
You bet.
Justice Rios Stafford.
Thank you, Judge. And good to see you, Mr. Petty. I don't know if you remember, but we met back at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, at a planning commission meeting.
We
over
were
the
discussing
city
another project on the west side.
Cobblestone
That's
Farms.
right,
Yeah,
that's right.
exactly. And I was on the board of the Housing Authority back at that time, and because of that kind of chance meeting, I know you ended up talking to the old executive director at that time, Angela Belford, about, and I remember we voted on this, wrapping in the Fayetteville Housing Authority nonprofit, FHAD, and as the nonprofit partner. Is that agreement still in place? Are they still the nonprofit partner, or have things changed?
So no,
Okay.
we, as you obviously know, and I don't know if you're still on
No.
there or not, there has been a lot of change and turnover in the board
Yes.
and staffing there, and so we were having a conversation one day about this project and other projects that they had going on, and I just said, look, here's the deal. The previous executive director reached out because they have a mission, obviously, in affordable housing, and wanted to, know if we could possibly talk sometime in the future about some sort of project. And I suggested that maybe this is one. It was one that wasn't required to have a nonprofit or anything, but that's just kind of how we operate. We do partner with nonprofits in lots of locations, and I said, but I know there's been a change in the board, and if you think that it's in your best interest, in the best interest of the Housing Authority to respectfully bow out and not be a part of this one, that will be perfectly fine. I want to be respectful of what's going on here, and you seem to be working on some other issues and other dispositions of projects that I think, probably has made the paper, and other projects that they disposed of. And I said, it really, this project is not dependent upon your participation. And so she met with her board, and they decided to kind of, re-narrow their focus again on public housing for the time being. And I told them the door was always open if they decided they wanted to discuss it in the future again.
Do you remember around what time when that was that they bowed out?
It
Last
was
year, maybe?
It was last year, but I don't remember the time.
Do you have a new nonprofit partner for this?
So we do have one. It's one that it's called Restore Hope.
Okay.
It was an initiative for a few years ago. They do a lot of good across the state. They've got one in an office in Little Rock too, but they have one in the Fort Smith area, and they've been targeting coming here. And so I happen to know one of the individuals, and we were talking about what had happened, and she said, well, we'd love to participate if we can, so.
Okay. And then is their role going to be kind of similar to the role that the
So it will be
previously?
it will be very similar. The services that are going to be provided to the veterans will be provided by the experts. Our expertise is how do we pull all of this different type of funding together and make it look somewhat like what we're showing you here. Our expertise is not in serving the veterans,
Right.
and so that's why we work closely with the Veteran Services offices and others that provide those services. So they will have similar capabilities, not veterans specifically, but other, if there's a spouse of a veteran that needs help with obtaining a GED or whatever the service that they provide at Restore Hope, they'll be able to help those as well. They're just not veteran specific.
Great. Okay. Another question I had, the new architects, MBL. I've heard good things about them. I've heard the people who've seen these plans say great things about them. I know that they built a couple cool buildings, like the library storage building off MLK that is right on the bike trail, and I see it all the time there. And Champions Hall over on Duncan. And I remember when you came to us, I think it was 2 years ago, The plans looked a lot different from these, and everybody has told me these are way, way, way improved. How did you end up choosing the new architects, or how did they end up coming into this?
Great question. So just for a little history on this project, like I said, it literally started, and the funding was received on Cobblestone at the same time as this one. So
Okay.
funding in 2020, which we had started the process and putting it together to get ready to even apply for funding in 2019. But the original site for this project in response to the RFQ was on another location that the county owned, and it was more residential in nature. And so the buildings looked more like garden-style apartments. And then when we decided it was best to move from that location here, the existing architect, we just picked up their plans and picked them up and put them down over here. And that was just not, we did that, and then we stepped back and said, that's really not conducive to the neighborhood and what we're, it needs to be something that complements the neighborhood and the design. And with the city of Fayetteville, even though, that was, my client is the county, we wanted it to complement that major thoroughfare there on College. And so, having worked with MBL on Cobblestone, they did the design out there. I said, hey, would you guys be interested in helping us kind of reset? And the timing was good to do that because we had received the funding, and then the pandemic and all of the things that were happening that had caused delays, and then we had to seek additional funding because of the increase in cost and unprecedented inflation in construction, and so we just said maybe it will be good timing to hit the reset button and relook at what we're doing here. And so that's kind of how we ended up with them, was a previous conversation or previous work with them.
I see. Okay. Yeah. And just, and so just to, some of the, I know that when we were all there with our shovels at the groundbreaking a year and a half ago, and the newspaper, I guess, published that this thing is going to open in mid-2022, and that was a year ago now. And I know, we had the pandemic and everything else. And is that kind of the basic, and inflation, is that kind of the basics of the funding is why the delay has happened?
So
basically?
yes, we got to the same situation where the sheriff was. Had a great design, had a great project, and all of a sudden we were several $1 million over budget, even though we had received additional funding. And so that's the bottom line. In full disclosure, I do not like groundbreakings. I love ribbon cuttings, but I hate groundbreakings for that very reason, because we weren't ready, but it was in conjunction with the anniversary of 9/11 and with the veterans emphasis. We just thought we could hurry up and push it along a little bit, and we just weren't ready.
Gotcha.
And so, fair question, but yeah, that's kind of why we're where we're at today.
Okay. All right.
But
think
I can
that's-
see the light, and it's not an oncoming train.
Okay, that's good to know. It's I think this is going to be a cool project, an important project for an important and often overlooked segment of our community. So I'm excited to hopefully see this, real shovels get put into real dirt, and hopefully have this see the light of day. So thank you for your
Absolutely.
work on this.
Thank you. And we have had conversations, with the previous judge, and then when Judge Deacon took office, we wanted to kind of give updates, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're relying upon third-party professionals, the guys that do the soils investigation, the guys that do the water design, the architects, and the how do we make sure that this looks and feels and fits and is in accordance with all of these requirements that we have on the funding side, the county has and what the city, you know. And again, that was my instruction to them when we hit the reset button is, look, this is in the city of Fayetteville. It's a county project, but we want nobody to know the difference. We want it to be the focus is on the veterans, and we don't need to have an argument over this building needed to be back or needed to be up because, you know, that doesn't serve any purpose. We want it to be about the veterans, and so I said, let's design this as much as we possibly can with no variances, and like I said, we got down to one or two, you know, minuscule matters. And again, we've met with the city and had a conversation with them as well. So, and the judge and the city attorney and the county attorney, they all have these letters that agree that this is what we can do, you know, and that's it. So,
Additional questions for Mr. Petty? Thank you for being here, sir. We appreciate you.
thank you.
With that, we're going to move on to item number 9, an ordinance repealing ordinances 2009-33, 2009-43, and 2009-67 to allow appeals of the decisions of the County Planning Board and the County Board of Zoning Adjustments to be filed in Circuit Court. Item number 23-0-076. Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. Basically, I think we've all heard a lot of comments from all of us regarding the CUP process, how long it takes. Basically, you go back and add it up, it takes 25 to 28 weeks from application to completion of all appeals. I think it's too long of a time period, and I also think it's an undue burden on everybody involved. Both those are for or against the CUP. It's just a long period of time and it's ridiculous. I do know, under the leadership of Judge Deakins, the county is looking to redo zoning, redo planning, and that type of thing, and I think that that's a much-needed effort required, but I also think it's going to take time. So what this ordinance basically does is tries to bring into more efficient and reduce that burden of the 25 to 28 weeks down to more common by taking the 3 amendments identified, repealing those, and basically going back to the original ordinance that was written, which is basically the Planning Board and the Circuit Court for Appeal. I think it's time to get into a more efficient process for all involved, to get through that process and to have an answer as to whether a CUP can be approved or not. With that, I ask for your support to take this ordinance to the quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Okay, I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. Further discussion, Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. I'll be the first to admit that I do not enjoy CUP appeals at all. I feel like this court lacks a lot of the expertise and the professional education that our planning board has. And however, I'm concerned that if the focus is a time-saving element, I don't know if pushing this to the courts is going to make that any less timely. I know that there's a large backlog in that, and so sometimes that could end up being a longer process than even this one. However, I do see merit in removing this body from that process, as we've all seen and been looped into several lawsuits that doesn't really matter what we determine at this stage in the process. If they don't like our appeal ratifying one way or another, it's going to get pushed to that court system anyway. So I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Justice Taylor?
Thanks, Judge. First, I'd like to say the brevity of this is brilliant. I thought that was great. But just so that the process, if you will, is out there, and so that everybody's clear on kind of how we arrived to where we are versus what we're talking about doing. Those 3 ordinances listed in Justice Lyons' ordinance today were voluntary. So it's the equivalent of talking about what we were talking about earlier, where the county went above and beyond the default. The default was that somebody doesn't like a CUP from the board of, the planning board, they go to the circuit court to appeal it. The county stepped in and decided, hey, we want the quorum court to be involved in that process, and so we added that extra step, right? And so it's the equivalent of, to me, in some sense, of telling the county clerk to publish these notices. And so what Justice Lyons is saying is, hey, that process has been rife with issues all the way from efficiencies or lack thereof to creating emotional arguments that were not backed up by facts, being decided by a board, being us, who are not experts in any of these fields. And so one way to undo that and to keep that confusion away from, you know, us would be to go back to the way it was before. And so I think that's brilliant, and I'm all for it.
Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. My concern about this, and I realize that I'm, you know, these CUPs do get to be emotional and all, but I mean, I think that's our job. We knew it was our job when we ran for office, that was going to be part of what we were doing. But what my concern is that I'm afraid that if we do this, it's going to cut out the ability of the average person to pursue an appeal, because it's going to be very favorable, I think, to the developers and those with deep pockets. But the ordinary neighbor out there who wants to object to something being built in his house, someone who's moved there, who wants to protect their investment, their home, the peace and quiet enjoyment of their home, I'm afraid they're not going to be able to come up with money to go to circuit court, because, I mean, it's possible that they could file a pro se case, but believe me, I've done that, and it's very hard. And I checked with a couple of people who have appealed recently, and they told me one appeal cost a $5,000 retainer and an estimated cost of $20,000 depending for the entire appeal, depending on whether or not there were depositions. And the other person told me that they paid a $10,000 retainer with an estimate of up to $25,000. So I worry about that we're cutting out the ability of people, neighbors, like we've heard, that we hear every time that come and talk about, they're worried about, you know, how that's going to affect their home values and their peaceful enjoyment of their property. I'm afraid that this is going to cut them out of the process.
Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge, and appreciate the comments from the colleagues. One I did forget is, and my colleague brought up, is the planning board. We look to the planning board to be the experts in this area. I don't know the stats, didn't have time to go add it up, but I know personally what the planning board brings to me is what I tend to lean towards until something proves different. And to date, I can't remember of any CUP that I've looked at from the time I started attending the quorum court previously to be elected to date, to where I would have overturned a planning board's decision. And that's where the experts are. We've said that in this numerous times when we debate CUPs. The planning board's the expert, this is what they say. And we tend to lean towards what their decision is. And so, again, understand the comments, but I think it's even for those citizens that are trying to protect their own interest, it's still a huge burden with the time that it goes through. I looked at other ways. Because of state law, couldn't find another way, okay? But again, I think this is the best we have. I think the best approach overall is what the county's doing right now to change the entire zoning of Washington County, the planning process, the master plan, et cetera. That's the real end result. This is, in my opinion, just an interim to get us to that point and you know, take off that burden across the board of even the citizens coming here 3 months in a row, you know, to restate and go through it so they make sure they didn't miss stuff and that type of thing. But again, thank you, Judge.
Justice Taylor?
Thanks, Judge. I want to address a couple things that Justice Coger said, and she's exactly right in that when all of us came into this office, this was the job, right? Like the CUP appeal was part of it. That's something I really had not thought of till she said that. But more importantly in my mind, though, is what she's talking about with the cost. And so this is really a financial issue for all involved. And so basically, you know, the question is, do we weigh the private property rights of neighbors and give them more credence than we do to the actual applicant, or is there some balancing there to where, you know, the stakes become real? And so one thought of that is to force somebody to do more than show up here and talk to us for 3 minutes at a time for 12 minutes total that costs essentially nothing, or in the alternative to do something with some real teeth to it that ultimately is now the appeal process as it is after this body, and just bypass our whole deal here. And so to me, it definitely cuts down on the freebies, right? So like you don't get a free look anymore. And that's something to think about in regards to if you were the applicant or if you're the neighbor. So, you know, it ups the stakes in my mind as to if it were to pass, what the process is and what it means for folks, because that is real money at that point that you're laying out if you're going to be part of an appeal on the positive or the negative side. And so, you know, if there is a way to strengthen the authenticity and the depth of the planning board, I think with this ordinance in mind would be a good time to do that.
Justice Real Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. I just wanted to say that, you know, regardless of whether we do or don't pass this, it's not going to make the fundamental problem go away. And the fundamental problem is that people are filing appeals for a reason. They're not, you know, they're not just doing them on whims. And so maybe there is some issues completely with our planning process and maybe with some of the decisions of the planning board. Obviously, if they were, you know, perfect all the time, they'd be coming up with ways that made both sides could live with, and maybe there'd be fewer appeals. I don't know. But I do know that it seems like something needs to be fixed. And it sounds like we're working on something. I'm encouraged to see what the results of that are. You know, and part of that is that all of the, you know, we've had this for decades. All the land in the county is zoned for low-density residential or agricultural by right, and that's it. There's no allowance for any sort of commercial zoning except for through the CUP process. But we are an incredibly fast-growing county. I think now Northwest Arkansas is up to adding 36 people a day. And, you know, we do need things like storage units and wedding venues and, companies that pour cement and they store their trucks at home. You know, we do need all those sorts of things. But our approach to it so far, because we don't have any sort of commercial zoning, we don't have any sort of, you know, designated commercial areas in the county, has been completely scattershot. So people are just sort of putting things here, there, and everywhere, wherever they, you know, happen to find a cheap piece of land, and that's causing conflict with neighbors. So a lot of this is being caused and created by us, the county. So I completely agree that we need to really go through that process, take a hard look at where our zoning is falling down, where it needs to be updated fundamentally, and where the whole process needs to be fixed, because otherwise we're not going to solve what the problem beneath this is. We're just taking ourselves out of it.
Justice Secchi?
Thank you, Judge. If I may ask, Director added rather quickly about the planning department's processes. Welcome to the hot seat.
I wasn't expecting that. Good evening, everyone. Sam out of Planning Office. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. During the process, do citizens have an opportunity to voice their concerns?
Okay, let me go over like the whole process, just like the CUP, for instance. The whole like planning process is like 5 weeks long, from beginning to end. Normally it starts on a Friday, the day after the planning board, and ends on like a Thursday, which is like the planning board. Let's say like tomorrow is Friday, and you have like a CUP, and you're applying, and you have every checkbox, paid money, and everything. So the following week, between Monday and Wednesday, we prepare like all the tech packets to send to the stakeholders so they can give us back a feedback. We prepare all the maps or the neighbor notification list to be sent out with that. So we give them about a week. The following Tuesday, we meet with the stakeholders and the applicants to go over the tech review agenda and everything that needs to be submitted to meet the qualification for approval, or like the planning board, to be able to meet the planning board approval or to be presented to them. So we give them about another week. So the following Tuesday we meet, and that's called the resubmittal. So we wait for you after you receive all the comments from the engineering, road departments, other departments that need to be addressed. You bring it to us within that week. Let's say you missed your submittal day, this project will be tabled for the following cycle. If it's not, and you get us everything, because that's the ordinance we have. Let's say it's already done, you've submitted everything we needed. The same week on Thursday, we send the neighbor notification, and that meets another ordinance of notifying the neighbors within 14 days of the planning board meeting. We do that, we send everything. The following Friday, we prepare the planning board packets that goes to the planning board with everything from A to Z about the project. And that's basically same week when we prepare the presentation, and on Thursday we present the public fairly. And we make sure that within that neighbor notification week and the following week, we receive the feedback from the public, and that's also included in our presentation. And there is also, if you go to the staff report that we publish online, you can read according to ordinance so-and-so, neighbor's notification, and neighbor's notification were sent 14 days within 300 feet or half a mile, depends on the project, to the neighbors, and we received opposition numbers or no opposition or support. So we list all of that and we present them to the planning board. Based on all of this, the planning board make their own decision. It's either yes or no. And for the CUP, we have to have the majority of the body. So we have 7 members of the planning board, so it has to be at least 4 yeses versus 3 noes.
At what point in this process do citizens have an opportunity to object or appeal what is going on?
Okay, so once the planning board is done and reach the decision, they have 30 days to submit an appeal with the county clerk.
Okay.
And that comes to us. And most people they do it sooner than later. Some applicants, they wait until the last minute, and they send us on Friday at 4. Here you go, we're appealing this decision, and that takes longer. There is an ordinance that says we have to wait 30 days before anything moves to the quorum court for that. That's a grace period, the 30.
Another question, do you know how much the application fee is?
Oh yeah, absolutely, it's $250 right now.
So,
for the
but
CUP.
for the citizens to protest, it's $150?
No, it's everything the public does is free. The appealing is free.
Appealing's free.
Everything is free. We don't charge for anything. The CUP review fee is $250. Yes.
Okay. Okay. At any time, does the planning board have a session to listen to citizens' comments?
Yes, it's the same. I don't know exactly if there is a set time for it's here we have half an hour or 40 minutes or something like that. We try to make it our rule of conduct says 3 minutes, and we try to do the same thing. We alternate before support and opposition. So we give you 3 minutes for an individual, up to 10 minutes for if you're speaking for a group. Yes. The planning board listens to the public opposition, and they have the chance also to bring us a jump drive or to bring their own equipment so they can do a presentation, and we've done this many times.
In your professional opinion, do you feel that the citizens are given a good opportunity?
We try to do the best we can because we cater to all our citizens, the applicant and the neighbors. They're still the citizens of Washington County. Yes. We do the best we can to be fair to
Thank you for bringing that up, because that's what we do here, try to be fair.
Oh, definitely,
and
we have
listen.
It's part
So
of
when
the
you do
job.
come to the quorum court and you hear the appeal, are you hearing it all over again? Of what y'all,
Normally, we present them, so when the appeal process, let's say like they submitted like an appeal through the county clerk and we're being notified, so we communicate with the quorum court coordinator to make sure if they have, of course, it has to pass like the 30 days like grace period. Let's say like that's passed. We see if they have any place on the agenda to be placed on the quorum court agenda. Let's say like yes, for instance, we have like 2 of them coming up like on the June 15th. So we already coordinated everything with like Miss Myra, and she said, and Mr. Brian Lester, and he said like, yeah, okay, we're gonna have this. By our ordinance, we have to notify the same neighbor that be notified for the CUP. Again, for the CUP, we send like certified mail. For the appeal, we send like regular mail. It has to be sent like 20 days before. So everything for the June 15th appeal were sent like on the 25th of May. And that's another ordinance we have to meet as well. So it's like lots of your timing
so it sounds like
issues.
it's a process, it's a redundant process coming to the quorum court almost.
Yeah, we present
Because you
because like the
present it
quorum
like you
court
do,
most
it's like
likely.
the planning
Yeah, the
board.
quorum court most likely they've never heard the project before,
Correct.
so we present the same presentation with extra. As you remember, like last time when I presented, I gave you the results of like what the planning board says, like deny and how, and we
Sure.
give you the statistics for it.
What's important to me is to know that our citizens are being heard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we give the chance to almost everyone. Some people, like, they elect not to show up, so they send us, like, emails and they send us letters, and we mention that in the concerns when we present the plan to the planning board, which is concerned, and we summarize them. It's like safety, roads, noise.
EDEQ.
Yeah, all of it. We put, like, the point of view of the opposition or the support, like, in the presentation.
Okay. Thank you for giving us that
Absolutely.
rundown. And I feel confident that you are hearing our citizens.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank
you
you.
so much. Always.
Justice Lemming?
Don't run off, Sam.
6.5.
I've said this time and time again. The CUP process is, we're halfway on the fence. There's really no laws. I mean, how many CUPs have we had that's come through here that was turned down that's not operating right now today?
I can't tell you like statistically how many, but it's not as many.
Every one of us JPs can drive around in our districts and we can find businesses that has not got a CUP that's a commercial business. And we have nobody to enforce them. We have no law to enforce them. Brian can send a letter, they wad it up and throw it in file 13. How many people have you seen go to jail over a CUP?
Well, that's like another good point. So we don't have an enforcement officer. So we regulate. We don't enforce as much as we would love to. We send like a letter that like notify the public. Let's say like you have a business that like requires a CUP.
I got 4.
Yeah, see?
We're going to go look at them.
Of course. So we ask you to comply. We send you a letter that says like this is our ordinance and we would love for you like to apply to be in compliance. Most people, they respond back. Some of them, they don't. We do have something in our code that says it's up to $200 fine a day. We coordinate with the sheriff's department whenever like the county attorney makes sure like that it's like eligible like to do that. And I'm not sure like how the process works for citation. I guess like we ask them and they cite them, but I've never seen how the process work or like I don't know even where the money goes if they get like.
Jay probably don't have nobody on staff that knows all about buildings, so that's going to be a hard deal. And it's kind of like I was talking to you about this one large scale development that was passed in 2014, and they're just now getting some of it done in 2023. And I was talking to you about the one that's got 8 trailer houses running off one water tap. That's not legal.
Yeah,
and we don't have
completely
people to
different.
go out and police it. So what good are we doing sitting here arguing about it?
Yeah, we don't have inspections.
And we either need to be the planning board or we need to be quorum court. We don't need both of us. It's one or the other. And what we got going here is a good idea to get out of it and let the planning board and the circuit court handle it. But I don't want to take the rights away from the people either to come up here and argue the point. I don't want to do that. But we need to get the CUP process fixed somehow. If we need to turn it over to the planning of all of Northwest Arkansas, but it is broke. And, you know, you ain't gonna get a spanking for it if you don't do what you're told to do. I mean, that's where we're at. We don't have nobody to enforce it.
We've been working like with the regional planning and like the previous judge for like to overhaul like the whole process. And it's been like about like 3 years or like and more. And we're still like working on it. So like I'm not the one who can like change anything. So it has to be a process. I mean, I'm part of this, but like I'm not the one who can like decide what's gonna happen.
Well, we need to quit kicking that can down the road and we get to get that process going. It sounds like a very important process to, as much as Northwest Arkansas is growing and going crazy, and, you know, the city of Fayetteville and Springdale's, they're full. They're gonna have to go out in the county. So we've got to get this together to make it all work.
I totally agree. I have like a stack of papers already like done.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. I will vote to move forward. However, I'm not sure that this is the right thing to do. So I want to move it forward to keep it alive, but I want to study it out a little bit more. Some of my concern, if you look at the map there behind JP Pond, and what you'll see is Washington County. And what you'll see is a supermajority in Springdale and Fayetteville. The supermajority can come in here, maybe it's not you that are elected, maybe next time it's someone else, but they can come in and make all the decisions for all the county, and yet they don't live out there. They live in Springdale and Fayetteville. Here's five of us sitting right here. Fayetteville, 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 and part of Fayetteville. And so Fayetteville and Springdale can make all the decisions for Prairie Grove, Farmington, Greenland, Lincoln, Morrow, Cincinnati. So what I'm saying is it's very difficult for me to want to turn it over because, well, everything's just became so political. Who's to say that someone in the circuit court isn't political? We're seeing it happen constantly with different courts in the country, and everything's going political, so they can say, well, these are my friends, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to pass this, or I'm not going to pass that. You're not guaranteed that you got anything any better than here. What makes a judge on circuit court real estate expert? So I'm not sure what the answer is, but I'm not sure this is going to be it. But I just don't want the county people, the ones who are going to be affected by the decisions made. As Willie said, Fayetteville and Springdale are full, so you got to move outside. Well, outside is the rural area. And so if the city people make the rules for the county, then they're making the rules for the rural people. And it just doesn't seem fair to me, or could be not fair. If everything is perfect and all people are thinking correctly, then you should do whatever's the best for the entire county. But there's biased. And so I'll vote yes today and move it forward, but I want to study some of this out. Thank you.
If I could comment two things, that's okay. Your concern, though, is this court about being outnumbered by people who are in the city. The other thing is we are working on the update of the planning. We're working with Mr. Jeff Hawkins. I'm sorry. Yeah, he worked for regional planning, and he's pseudo-retired right now. And but it's a mammoth lift. But I will say one of his primary recommendations when we bring the new zoning is that the quorum court will not be responsible for appeals. And the thing that I see that troubles me as a judge overseeing this is the applicant is always beholden to my mind in fact, because verifiable by our planning department. The problem we get into is when we let emotion enter the fray, especially with neighbors, they don't have verifiable fact. And that's what bothers me. That's what really bothers me is that the emotion can take over and they're not talking about fact anymore. And that's the reason I think he's telling us to move in this direction. So the new planning code that we would bring, which is we'll give you guys plenty of time to have comments and share it and study it and stuff like that. Because it'd be the quorum court would not be involved in that process. Yes, sir.
Well, since, in rebuttal, or to say something more about it, the planning board is how many people? 7?
7.
So you got 7 people making the decisions, and you got 3 of them missing. And then you got 4 making the decision, and then we've actually seen that come up recently. Mm-hmm. And so three are making decisions.
Yeah. And that's something I'm trying to work with the planning board with to try to get them to make sure and understand how critical that is. But I also would want you guys to appreciate they're as frustrated by the process as you are.
Sure.
You know what I mean? They're supposedly chosen and referred to that committee by their technical knowledge or their professional knowledge or whatever that is. And I think they feel the same frustrations that you feel around the horseshoe is no matter what they say, you know what I mean, it's going to go to you guys. Just like you feel like no matter what you say, it's going to go to circuit. You know what I mean? And so back to Justice Taylor's point, I thought those are very good, that if we're raising the echelon a little bit of the debate, I think that's good. But once again, that's my view of it.
Well, I will go ahead and say this too. This was because I've already almost forgot. What Willie said was correct. We've done numbers of CUPs and would turn them down, and yeah, they're operating in my area or close to my area anyway, and it's just like it's a joke. It's a joke. I mean, so
We definitely need enforcement, so.
well. We can't put any more people in jail anyway, so. Anyway.
Justice Taylor?
Thanks, Judge. Sam, a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
To what Justice Ecke was asking, just so we're all clear, when somebody applies for a CUP, there is a statutory notice that goes out based on what criteria?
One of our ordinances says like we have to notify the neighbors like within 300 feet or like half a mile, depending on the type of the project. For a CUP, general like use CUP, it's like 300 feet from the perimeter or like the property line.
So like you draw a circle and everybody in that circle.
We do have like the system, like, I do the GIS, like, so we do the 300 like buffer 4, and we do intersection of like who owns who, and we notify them based on like the address we get aggregates from the assessor's office.
Okay.
If it's high intensity or like a mining operation, it's half a mile like radius.
Okay.
So, everything, all of this like is written in the code. So like, we use this as the criteria. That's what it is.
And you attend all the planning board meetings, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So this is kind of off topic, but not really. It's exactly what Justice Dennis and the judge were talking about. The last couple of meetings you have observed, how many people would you say out of those 7 are absent on average?
Well, the last like 2 meetings we had 2 and 2. For some reason, one of them was out of town for business, and the other one had like a death in the family. So that's something you cannot control. So they had like 6 of them, and last year, I guess we had a meeting during Christmas time because most of them were like out like for family like reasons.
Right.
We had like just 4 people, and we informed them before they start. It's going to be a CUP with like 4 yeses at least to pass.
Right.
Otherwise, so you have the chance. You can table it now or like take your chances. And we had one applicant elected like to postpone it.
Yeah.
And the other one says like, I have faith in you guys. Like, let's move on.
Right.
So, and it was denied and he appealed it. But it's the idea that like that happens. If we have like maybe 15 or 10, let's say, and 2 or 3 missing, we still have like more the
Right.
majority to vote for it.
Right.
But we're limited to 7, and things like life happens sometimes.
But I know, I understand that, having been gone last month. But the role also, just so that we're clear, of the planning board has nothing to do with budgeting, right?
With what, excuse me?
Budget, they don't touch any money.
Well, they get like compensated $75 like per meeting.
No,
they
no,
attend
I'm
to.
saying they're not in charge of anybody's budget.
No,
They don't have
no,
a
no, no.
job other than to do the plan.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, that's
their
all they
job.
do.
Yes.
That's it.
Yep.
That's
They
their,
just, like,
that's
come-
all they do.
Yeah, they come to the planning board like just like
They
to,
don't
to
like
vote.
figure
yeah.
out how many people are in jail or anything like that.
No, they're not even like employed by the county. Yeah.
All right. So that's their only job.
Yep.
And they're supposed to be good at it.
Yep.
But they don't show up sometimes.
Well, yeah.
Okay, thank
we,
you.
we do the same thing as we do here. Like we send like notification and we do a head count. So it's
Right.
like who's going to be attending, and most of them they reply we're going to be here. And I remember like one of them was held in traffic. There was an accident. He was not unable like to reach town.
Right.
So that's also
Yeah.
something unfortunate circumstances
Okay.
like also happens. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Most of them, I would say like all of them, they're like extremely diligent about like showing up, like participating, but sometimes things happens. Yep. No worries.
Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. I've made some notes here, so my comments are going to be kind of scattered, but Arkansas 14-17203, we can have up to 12 members on the planning board. We don't just have to have 7. We could have up to 12. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just throwing that out there. Now, also, and this is something that I feel like the county attorney is going to have to answer, but I'm concerned about the difference between a legislative appeal and administrative appeal, because the person appealing is going to have different rights, and I don't want to get this mixed up, and we have an attorney here who might correct me, but okay. I think it's an administrative appeal. They would have a trial de novo, which is completely, the judge would start from scratch. But I'm not sure that's correct. I'd like for us to understand that and see how that's going to affect the rights of anybody who would appeal to the circuit court, because I really don't understand that part. And I can ask Mr. Lester, but I did not think to do that but today before this. And so the other thing that I want to mention is it's very different. And I have been to these planning commission meetings, as you know, and I do appreciate that the public, the community is welcomed, and they're always allowed to speak regardless of how many people are there.
I was gonna say, it's not always like open like to the neighbors, it's open
Right.
to public. So anyone like from like, we had like a project that one of the neighbors, relatives who lives like in like Missouri, he said like, oh, I'm visiting with him, I don't wanna be exposed to this. And like he came here like, and like that's like 2 years ago, and so it's open to public, it's not like just.
Right, and I just want to point that out, and I'm very glad to hear that, but that's different than having the ability to appeal to the circuit court. And I'm just saying that if we do this, we're gonna cut out the ability of the ordinary people who can't go out and hire an attorney for $5,000 or $10,000 to file an appeal. And when I first took office in January, I wrote Judge Deakins, and I mentioned that I would like to see us work with the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission, to come up with some solutions. So I would like to see us do that and not just jump in and make this huge change right now, because I think it's going to affect people in a way that we haven't taken into consideration. And also, back to my original thing about administrative versus legislative, I really don't understand how that would be affected.
Yeah, for
Thank you.
clarification, when anything goes to the circuit court, the planning department does not get involved in it. It's
Right.
supposed to like with the attorney.
Right, but it would make a difference to whoever was appealing, whether or not they got to start from scratch or not. So that's what I was trying to understand. Thank you.
Justice Lemmy?
Sam, on the 7 folks that you have, where are they all from? I mean, they've scattered out from everywhere, or are they all one location, or?
The
kinda-
planning.
The planning's 7.
I
they-
believe like they're like from across
So there is
the
some
county.
rural and some city, and
I'm not sure like about that, but like I know most of them, they live like in the county, so none of them is like just like strictly like from Fayetteville or so. I know like some in Goshen, somewhere else.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Justice Simons?
I call the question.
We have a motion to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. With that, we'll take up public comments. Thank you, Director Ada. Is there any public comments on this item?
Sherry Main, 15451 Riches Road, Fayetteville. I'll try to wrap this up in 3 minutes, which I probably won't hit all of this. This is a very, very important topic here. The first thing I want to point out is on the ordinance, and starting in line 18, there is some corrections that need to be made, and I can bring these up with my JP if he'll listen to what I've got here. That's at the pleasure if you want to hear these now in my public comment time, or if I need to take them up with my JP.
It's your 3 minutes. Take the pleasure.
I'll skip that. Hopefully I can get these corrected. The idea to pass this on to the circuit court as an appeal measure is passing the buck. In my opinion, most district judges will recuse themselves from hearing the appeal. I speak from experience, trust me. I've had several of these on appeal cups that I have vocally voiced my opinions on, and the judges in circuit court would not hear them. They were all recused, and we had to go to Little Rock. Hiring an attorney in Little Rock is more costly, and this is going to make an undue hardship on the citizens of Washington County for the benefit of the quorum court and the justices of the peace. The ratification of a cup still has to come before the quorum court, has to be ratified and has to have an ordinance to approve it. You're going to hear these issues if they're passed by the planning department or the planning board, which is 7 members appointed, I might mention, by the county judge, and all of you actually in the first meeting of the year, any new ones that come in by ordinance, those are agreed upon. So you should know who your planning members are. You're endorsing them, you as a quorum court, and the judge is appointing them. So he should have their background history. I know all of this because I applied for the planning committee under a previous administration's leadership and was denied because of that. They felt my backdrop and my education was not, I guess, anyway, it's just a joke. It is. And the people on the planning are there. They have day jobs just like all of you. They don't have time to read 100 public comments that the planning director has received on the issue. It's just a time thing. They're going to hear, I've been to all of them. You get 3 minutes if you're an individual. You get 10 minutes if you're representing a neighborhood to speak.
Your 3 minutes is up.
I know,
Ms.
and I
May.
respectfully
Thank you so
request
much.
additional time to speak.
Your 3
If I
minutes is
can
up.
get a
Additional
JP
public
to-
comments on this?
If I can get a JP to make them.
Any other additional public comments on this item? Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
Coleman Taylor. David Wilson. Sean Simons. Kyle Lines. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington. Absent. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond.
Item 9.1 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 10, a resolution expressing the willingness of the quorum court of Washington County, Arkansas to utilize federal aid funds for the Wheeler Road Clabber Creek Bridge project. I've invited Dr. Russell, who's our new grants administrator, up here this evening. We want to give some general comments to this and the next item about some federal grant dollars that are available to the county to replace some bridges. And with that, I'll give it to you, Dr. Russell, to kind of go over these parameters.
Thank you. My name is Bridget Russell. I am just pleased to be here with you and meet many of you for the first time tonight. the proposals, the ordinances that are before you came about, the process is you look at the county's needs, look at the funding sources, and try to find the best fits. There's many, many sources of funding out there that the county has used in the past: unpaved roads, local bridge projects, intersection improvement plans, and state aids. The projects that are listed in the two draft ordinances in front of you were the best fit we felt for the grant funding source with the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, which locally is managed by the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission. They've met with a team from Washington County several times and have been a part of the conversation looking at our information. To qualify for this program, there's several things that must be met. For example, certain status on the highway system, the bridge ratings if it's a bridge project, safety, security, congestion management, the 2045 population density maps, and all those things go into play. And then the recommendation, if the quorum court passes the ordinance to move forward, the application will be made and presented at the July meeting for the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission, and that committee will decide which projects are funded. Again, these two projects were chosen for this particular funding source based on their qualifications and their fit for the expectations of the grant program, and based on the guidance that we've had and the cooperation with the Planning Commission. They are 80-20. You can see that well, I guess I should just stop and let you see if there's some questions about either one.
A couple things that I'll add is this is once again, the Regional Planning Commission awards these grants. Benton County has done 7 of these projects. Washington County has done none of these projects. And so you can see the 80-20 match. This will be an expense for our county. As we've got some experience in the last few weeks, bridges are very expensive. But this shows our intent to move forward with the county. What we've been told by regional planning is that they're long-term projects. This will happen over the period of several years. It's working with the federal government, so it comes with its share of frustrations, but that they've had success with this in Northwest Arkansas, and these types of things, long-term looking forward, are what we're going to be able to do to leverage our dollars to take care of some of these aging bridges. And so with that, I'll open it up to Justice Lemming.
I'd like more information about the whole thing, overall cost, engineering, and yada, yada, yada. But Jackson Highway's got 2 little bridges on it. And how did we come to the conclusion that them bridges is the ones that needs to be worked on?
Yeah, that's what Dr. Russell's mentioning. There's a variety of factors that go into that.
Okay.
And of course, we work with the Regional Planning Commission for their recommendations. It's both use, growth, condition of the bridge, and what kind of road system it's on. And so when we put all those layers onto this project, these 2 bridges stuck out to us.
Well, I heard the words, the weight limit on it. We've got a road, I want to rebuild every bridge we got. We've got some in Summers, it's 1 lane, it's 110 years old. But we've got one in Bush Road in south of Lincoln that the county come out and they've asked for the property, and they've been told they could have the property. The county judge come out and put a weight limit sign on it. We can't get fire trucks across it. We can't get school buses won't go across it now. And that basically, the people that live down this road, they can't get nothing done. And I would rather see this money that I'm pretty positive it could be used for this bridge versus the 2 that's on Jackson Highway. They're just 2 small bridges on Jackson Highway I don't know of anything being wrong with them, but I don't go inspect them, and that's not my point. The point is this road is basically concrete trucks won't cross it. Schools won't cross it now. And I don't even think it's 20 foot long. And by our ordinances, we can't even put bridge stuff on it. But I would like for that to be looked at and do a bridge that we've told the public not to use rather than spend the money on a bridge that's nothing's wrong with it.
Well, I very much agree with you, and that's the danger of this is these bridges that were chosen because they matched the criteria of the grant. But I completely agree with you. We have a lot of bridges in the county that need either maintenance or replacement.
Well-
We're making the investment where we can with grant dollars in this particular case.
I understand that, and I understand, but if nobody brought this bridge up to the planning to talk to them about this bridge, I mean, the road department as much as went out there and they've talked to Mr. Leach and got the land approved, and they've been told that they're gonna get it fixed.
Yeah.
And, but
We looked at every list of every bridge in Washington County, and there were only a handful that would meet this specific criteria of these grants. And out of that, we're pursuing 2 projects.
Okay.
Justice Rios, yes, Dr. Russell?
Source. A lot of the other grant,
No. Red's good.
red's, see, that's just wrong. But anyway, I mean, you know, reds mean stop. But the other grant opportunities out there, such as paved roads and local bridges and those kinds of things, don't require this kind of application. This is just one type.
Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. I was just hoping to find out, just some more basic details about what these 2 projects are. It sounds like, if I'm kind of reading between the lines, these are existing bridges that are in use right now and that need to be rebuilt, have passed their lifespan, or what exactly is it? And it's on, as far as the Jackson Road one, there was mention of 2 bridges on Jackson, and this is just to fix one of them?
That's correct. This is
Okay.
for one. This is for 2 bridges.
Right.
A separate
One on-
resolution for each one.
Yeah.
The Wheeler Road is, of course, outside Fayetteville on Wheeler Road. One of the major criteria of this is the traffic on the road, both today and the expected traffic. And also that it wasn't necessarily a requirement. It was highly recommended to us that the bridges that we chose for funding needed to be poorly rated by the state inspection. So these bridges are both that. The bridge on Jackson Highway is right outside Lincoln Lake. And so it's very apt to flooding. We've kind of picked, I'll say 2 flavors. So the Wheeler Road Bridge is just very high use, both by residential, it's just very high trafficked. We've worked with some people out in the county, including talking to Mayor Hutchins in Lincoln. The Lincoln Lake Bridge is very critical because of the industry that traffics out there. Chicken houses, that type of thing. It's a very high trafficked area to go up to Siloam Springs. And so the reason why that one really came up to us was considering that bridge, it's very apt to flooding. We've heard that. And if it had major damage, that would be quite the impact to the citizens out there if that bridge were to be out for some period of time like that. So once again, this might go back to some of Justice Lemming's comments. This is not a program you use if this bridge needs to be replaced next year. This is a program you use if you can foresee this bridge needs replacement, upgrades, modifications that can take place in the next 4 to 5 years. Because there's a very slow and time-consuming process to working with the federal government on this. If I answer your question there.
You did, thank you.
Justice Ricker?
It's my understanding on this, all these resolutions are doing is authorizing the county to apply for these grants. And we in no way fund this or anything unless we get this grant. Do they already have estimates? Kind of an idea of what it's going to cost, or does that come later in the grant process?
That comes later in the process, so you are absolutely right. This shows the county's intent to pursue it.
Okay.
And
that's all I
so
needed then.
the federal government will come in, do the engineering, we'll cost share in that for the 80-20 split, but that's when plans and everything like that will come much more into focus. These are highly competitive, and so they kind of want to make sure and get as many ducks in the row as they can before they award this grant. One of them is to show the intent of the quorum court to support this endeavor. Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. I'd like to make a motion, we pass this to full quorum court with the due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Dean. With that, Justice Koger?
Thank you very much, Judge, and I'm happy to see this, and I appreciate the work that's gone into it. And I appreciate that you're bringing this to the court for approval for the grant. I wish all the grants could come like this to the court for approval before they're actually applied for. But what I want to ask you, Judge, is this: where will the 20% come from? Will it come from the general fund or from the road department money?
This will come from the dedicated road tax dollars that we have.
Thank you.
This is an investment we would make as a road department back into the county. Any further discussion on this? Thank you, Dr. Russell. Public comments on this item? Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll? This is just the one. We'll take them up separately.
Coleman Taylor. Yes. David Wilson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Shonda Washington. Beth Koger. Robert Dennis. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond.
Item number 10.1 will pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item 11, a resolution expressing the willingness of Washington County Quorum Court to utilize federal aid funds for the Jackson Highway Bridge Project. Justice Ricker?
Make a motion to pass this to full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ricker, second by Justice Lyons. Any further discussion or questions on this item? Any public comments on this item? Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
Coleman Taylor. Yes. David Wilson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Yes, Lisa Ecke. Yes. Charles Dean. Yes, Shonda Washington. Yes. Beth Koger. Yes. Robert Dennis. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Gary Ricker. Yes, Butch Pond. Yes.
Item 11.1 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. With that, we have our item number 12, which is a discussion and action on Circuit Clerk's 2 promotional raises. Circuit Clerk Sylvester, will you just come in here and give us the rundown on this really quickly?
Good evening. The really quickly version is that I had a couple of vacancies in my office, and these are 2 internal promotions. There is no additional funding due for these positions. These promotions will fall actually underneath what the amount of money is budgeted for those particular positions this year. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Justice Lemming?
I make a motion to send it to full quorum court for passage.
We just need to make a motion to approve it. Since there's no budget, this is just the approval in this committee. This won't go to the full quorum court. We just needed the approval of
I
person.
make a motion to approve it.
Motion to approve by Justice Lemming, second by Justice Ricker. Are there any further questions for Circuit Clerk Sylvester? Ms. Meyer, will you please call the roll?
Coleman Taylor. Yes. David Wilson. Yes. Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Charles Dean. Yes, ma'am. Shonda Washington. Yes. Beth Koger. Yes. Robert Dennis. Yes. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Yes. Willie Lemming. Yes. Gary Ricker. Yes, Butch Pond.
Yes.
Item approved. Thank you, Circuit Clerk
Thank
Sylvester.
you, Court. Thank you, Judge.
Justice Ecke?
Yes, Judge, I'd like to make a motion that we pass the consent agenda to the full quorum court.
Second.
What items would you like to put on there?
Oh, okay. 12, 11, 10, 9, that's it.
I have a motion to add items 9, 10, 11 to the consent agenda. Once again, item number 12 will not, it doesn't need to move to
It
the full
doesn't
quorum
need to move
court.
forward. Correct.
Is there any discussion on those items?
I didn't
Justice
catch the, I didn't catch the numbers.
9, 10, and 11 was the
9,
motion.
10, and 11, okay, thank you.
Motion to the consent agenda was made by Justice Secchi, second by Justice Dean. Is that correct?
I don't think 9 should go.
Okay. Justice Ecke, will you consider that a friendly amendment? I would like to. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. So that would make it items, the resolutions, items number 10, 11 on the consent agenda for the full quorum court. Justice Dean, does your second still stand? Yes, sir. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Items number 10, 11 will move to the consent agenda on the full quorum court. The last item on our agenda this evening is a public comment period. We have a 12-minute public comment period with 3 minutes per individual. If you would like to make public comments, come forward and state your name.
My name is April Backrow, and I am the Executive Director of Magdalene Serenity House, and I now reside in Fayetteville. As you know from my many emails and public comments and individual conversations, our organization requested a total of $33,000 in ARPA funds to cover housing costs for our 2-year residential program. We are the only program in Washington County that serves women who have experienced trauma, addiction, and incarceration, and the need for our program remains great. I've spoken at several meetings, sent several emails to the court, the judge's office, the grant administrator, and spoken to many of you regarding my concerns with the ARPA review process. My main concerns with the process are as follows. We were approved for ARPA funds for a different project through the city of Fayetteville. How can we be deemed eligible for ARPA funds through the city, but not eligible through the county? ARPA eligibility is determined by the Department of Treasury in the final rule, and that should remain the same across jurisdictions. One of the reasons our application was deemed ineligible was because our program is in Fayetteville, and we had access to city ARPA funding. However, the same criteria was not used to determine Upskill's eligibility for funding, as they have received ARPA funding from the city of Fayetteville, the city of Springdale, the city of Rogers, and Benton County. They received $2.9 million from this court without an application and without a formal eligibility review. Returning Home received a total of $1.9 million in ARPA funds. Can someone tell me how Returning Home is eligible, but my program for formerly incarcerated women is not? Using your criteria, shouldn't they be ineligible because their residents live and work in Springdale and had access to ARPA funding through the city of Springdale? Or was this not considered for some reason unknown to me? And we'll never know because they were not required to submit an application like the other nonprofits. Lastly, I've spoken to several JPs who privately expressed their support for our program and said that Magdalene Serenity House is a vital county service and should receive the same funding consideration as Returning Home. I've also spoken privately to several JPs who agree that our project should have been eligible for county ARPA funds. However, when it comes time to vote in support of our program, your actions don't match your words. The court gave their word that they would set aside $2.3 million for nonprofits, but Judge Deakins, you remain determined not to allocate those funds as they were intended. As a member of Washington County and a nonprofit leader, I remain extremely disappointed in this administration
Thank you.
and their
Your
priorities.
time has expired. Are there additional public comments?
I make a motion to extend time 3 minutes.
Your mic was not queued. Will you do that in the mic, please?
I'm so sorry. I make a motion to extend the time for 3 minutes.
I have a motion to extend the public comment period for the young lady for 3 minutes. Do I have a second? Second. Ms. Meyer, will you please call a roll?
Coleman Taylor. David Wilson.
Thank you.
Kyle Lyons. Lisa Ecke. Charles Dean. Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Beth Koger.
Yes.
Robert Dennis. Evelyn Rio Stafford. Willie Lemming. Gary Ricker. Butch Pond.
You have 3 more minutes.
Perfect. And I won't take that much time because I want to go home to my baby. I feel like there is a solution here. I've heard from y'all that your hands are tied. There's nothing we can do. It was in the hands of the other administration. But where there is a will, there is a way. And if we want to fix the mistake it is so clear that a mistake was made, at least for our application, you could easily send our application back to the NWAEDD for reconsideration, given these presented concerns. The ball is in your court, Judge Deakins, to make that decision. And if this were a priority for you, you would do the right thing. I have followed the rules. I have been respectful. I have worked diligently with this court for 3 years. And you know what? I'm walking away with nothing. Nothing for the women that we serve. A population of women who in this entire county have nowhere else to go for the support they desperately need to heal, recover, and rebuild. And how that is not a priority for you boggles my mind. And I hope you will take a deep look at what happened and you will make this right and approach this with the same vigor you have used to approach the EOC in the county jail. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments.
Sherry Main, 15451 Riches Road, Fayetteville. I'll try to finish up what I started earlier that I didn't get the points made. In the Code of Ordinances, a conditional use may only be allowed upon a majority vote of the entire board membership and must be ratified by the quorum court sitting in its legislative capacity by ordinance. The planning director shall present conditioning use rulings to the quorum court for ratification at its next meeting following the meeting of the board if in his or her opinion there is no likelihood of an appeal. However, ratification shall not be a bar to an appeal hearing as set forth in 11206. We need to revisit this planning code. This is not an administrative capacity sitting here. This is legislative. I've been to enough of these appeals through the circuit court to know. And the planning board, when they approve a CUP, it comes here, you ratify it. You're hearing the same information, the same grievances from the residents in the area that don't want the storage building. They don't want the wedding venue. They don't want the noise. They don't want the dirt pit. They don't want the mine. Whatever the case may be, they're going to hear it, even though you may approve it or you may appeal it. It's going to go to circuit court. What's changing? The only thing changes is the fact that if the planning board denies the CUP, it comes here for appeal first. And then, if you override the appeal, it has to be ratified by this court in its legislative capacity. I don't think we're getting anywhere. We're just muddying the water to make things more confusing for the residents. And it doesn't need to be any more confusing than what it is. I've been studying this since 2004, when the Para Task Force was appointed to even make ordinances. I was there when the original ordinance passed right here in this court. We need ordinances for zoning, and we need zoning regulations, and we need enforcement. We need to step back, revisit the planning ordinances, and see what is wrong. Fix the mistakes, the things that are wrong, make the wheel turn better for everyone, not just this quorum sitting here. You are justices of the peace. You're representatives of your constituents in your district. You are our voice. If you don't want to be our voice, why are you here?
Thank you.
You knew
Your time
the
has
job
expired.
before you.
Additional public comments?
I won't even ask for
Additional public
time
comments?
because I won't get it.
Ms. Main, Please respect
Thank
the
you,
process.
Judge Deakins. I'm leaving now.
Well, thank you. Public comments.
Hi, my name is Dee Dee Peters, and I live on Baxter Lane, which is near the Patriot Park project. And I wanted to thank you for your time, Judge, Justices, City staff, and Mr. Petty for still staying to hear me speak. I'm the daughter of an Army veteran. I support this project. Sorry, I'm nervous. I've lived on Baxter for 22 years, and when I purchased my house and had it worked on, I had some of the old timers tell me about the cave underneath North Street and how cows used to get stuck up there, and that when they poured the lot in the 70s, where Patriot Park is, that it just sucked all the concrete and asphalt into the ground. I've done the research with the city records, City of Fayetteville records, and that's how I'm the person that came up with the information about the medical office being proposed there, a 4-story medical office. And eventually it seemed that there just wasn't enough water supply to make that project feasible. They worked for 3 years on this project. Let's see. So I want the project to happen, but I want to make sure that it's the right space for the project. I think there's a lot of challenges on that hill. Several of us that have lived up there have had foundation work, very expensive foundation work done up there. So it's just, it's a concern of mine. Right now, the grass is anywhere from 3 feet to 50 inches on the lot. I have called the city to ask them to take care of it. They couldn't take care of it. I called the county, asked for them to take care of it. They were told not to touch that lot at all. Last week, the city came by and repaved Baxter. Tree limbs and bushes were sticking out 4 feet from the parcel, and luckily, the street was repaved, so they cut those branches and tossed them into the lot that you guys own. I mean, it's the county or the leaseholder's responsibility to take care of the lot, and it's not happening. The gas company recently, last year, put up some infrastructure there. That is failing. There's no one to talk to. I've called people. I get no response. I've left messages for Jim Petty's office last year, maybe, and I hope to speak with him after the meeting. I would love to be able to talk to someone if I see something there, trash, furniture, who can I call to get it removed? So far, there's nobody that is willing to take care of the property. So that's my current thing, is just, and I really wish that Mr. Petty would work with the city. I know he's done it with his cobblestone project. I hear nothing but great things. 2 adjacent properties have been purchased recently within the past couple of years, large parcels. Those people have plans. They've been talking with the city about that. There's opportunities for cost shares. There is a proposed turning lane on North Street that was acquired in the 70s when they did the project, when they came up with the plans. I would love to see some coordination with the city for that. You can already see that the stairway that is there has been damaged because a truck has run over it. It's the county-owned property. But the leaseholder, I don't know who's responsible for this. Who takes care of this?
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate it. Your 3 minutes has expired.
Okay, great.
I appreciate you. And with that, our 12 minutes has expired, so we're